As the warring factions blame each other for a recent outbreak of violence in Ukraine, we ask the US State Department why they've been putting the blame only on anti-government forces and ignoring reports from the OSCE. The US Army orders its soldiers stationed in Germany to stay away from the upcoming G7 summit, fearing that protesters could target them. And a senior Tajik police commander who underwent several counter-terrorism courses in America announces he has defected to Islamic State. Midday in Moscow. Thanks for joining us here on RT International. I'm Rory Souchet with this hour's top world headlines. Eastern Ukraine has seen a day of renewed shelling, with a number of residential suburbs in the Donetsk area getting caught in the fire. 6 civilians now reported to have been killed in this violence. Now, one of the hardest hit areas was the town of Marinka. According to some reports, it was caught up in intense fighting between the army and anti-government forces until the early evening. RT's Ilya Petrenko now reporting on the immediate aftermath from the region.
It all began with a sleepless night.
Половина 4 утра начались обстрелы, а потом к середине дня обстрелы до такой степени усилились, что дым со всех сторон.
Tatiana's yard was among dozens of other hits in Kirovsky and Petrovsky districts.
This is a civilian market that has just been hit by artillery shelling. The shelling is still ongoing, so we got to leave as quick as possible. The rescue teams are telling us to leave this area because life is more important.
For locals, choosing from fleeing the area under attack and hiding in basements was the #1 dilemma during all these tough hours.
Мне надо было еще 2 остановки пройти до убежища. Там мы останемся. Ну и тут слышим прямо над этим бух, а потом я уже не помню.
Оно свистит. Я заскочила, только заскочила, и на меня все посыпалось. Вышла. Слышу, бабушка, соседка кричит. А я сюда зашла, а весь забор разрушенный, и соседка лежит. А бабушка мне кричит, Люба уже нету.
As we were filming, shells kept cracking in the air. Then plumes of smoke led us and the locals to fresh destruction sites.
Раз легло. Ну, мы в погреб спустились. Потом вот увидели дым, пришли. Вот он дым. Пришли, ну буквально, не знаю, минут 10 прошло. И второй зал пошел. И вот он, дом второй.
Ilya Petrenko, RT, Donetsk.
Both sides are blaming each other for launching this recent outburst of violence. Each side claims they were simply defending themselves, with the army saying 5 of its troops were killed. Anti-government forces say 14 of their fighters were lost. In the meantime, among all the claims and the counterclaims, one interesting detail has emerged. The Ukrainian command has officially admitted to using weapons that had been previously withdrawn in accordance with a February truce. They say they informed their, quote, international partners before doing so. Despite that, Washington, one of Kiev's main backers, remains firm that it's only anti-government forces that are behind any and all violations. Here's Guy Chikan.
If you listen to the U.S. State Department, you may conclude that the Ukrainian government has never violated the Minsk agreements. The OSCE's daily reports from Ukraine show that both the rebels and the government violate the terms of the peace deal. And if you look at those reports, they do not show that the rebels are responsible for the overwhelming majority, that's a quote, of the violations, as the State Department claims. I read out some of the findings to the State Department.
I'm looking at the OSCE daily reports of violations, and here's what they show. In 9 of their reports, it appears that that Donetsk and Lugansk forces have violated the ceasefire. In 8 of their reports, it appears that the Ukrainian government has violated the ceasefire. In 9 of the reports, it was not clear who violated that ceasefire. Where do you, and I mean the State Department, get the information that the rebel forces are responsible for the vast majority of violations?
From a variety of sources, including the OSCE. So I'm happy to take a look at what you quoted specifically and look at the numbers underlying that.
A simple question. Do you acknowledge that the Ukrainian government, too, is violating the Minsk agreements?
Well, I think by saying a vast majority are the Russian separatist forces, that would then indicate that a very small minority are on the other side. But let's also remember here—
That is not clear from the OSCE daily reports.
I just told you I would look at them, and we can get into a numbers game here and see what numbers you're using and what other experts, including our team, says.
You did not answer. Yes or no? Did you answer the
I'm
question?
not going to say yes or no. I'm going to
government—
answer the question in the way I think is appropriate, and I just did, and I'm going to move on
Which is
now.
not answering.
Justin?
It is not easy to get a straightforward response from the U.S. State Department, sometimes even when the answer is obvious. In this case, they've put themselves squarely on the side of the Ukrainian government and refused to acknowledge even the most obvious violations.
Yeah, we are closely watching the shaky ceasefire in eastern Ukraine. We will bring you all the latest on the potential